Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant and looked at the blue-green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. His hands gripped the metal railing as memories flooded back to him. This was New Terra, the first world that humans had successfully colonized beyond Earth. It had been beautiful once, full of hope and promise. Now it was a prison. 30 years had passed since the Hegemony Coalition swept through human space like a deadly storm. The aliens had come without warning, their ships blotting out the stars above every human world. They were 4 species working together. The reptilian Vorthak with their sharp claws and cruel eyes, the insectoid Zentari that moved like living nightmares, the gaseous Phylan that could slip through the smallest cracks, and the crystalline Kyros that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The official report said all human colonies had been destroyed. The government told everyone that the people were either dead or enslaved. Earth had pulled back all its ships and closed its borders. The humans were beaten, broken, hiding in their home system like scared animals. That was what everyone believed. That was what the aliens believed too, but Jake knew the truth. Captain Lisa Barnes had spent 5 years sneaking through alien space, gathering information that the government desperately needed. Her small ship had visited dozens of worlds, always staying hidden, always watching. What she found changed everything. The human colony still existed. The people were alive. They were working as slaves for their alien masters, but they were alive. Admiral Carl Peterson had been planning this moment for those same 5 years. In secret shipyards hidden throughout the solar system, Earth had been building the most advanced fleet in human history. 50 ships, each one packed with technology that would make the aliens think twice about underestimating humanity again. The Second Earth Fleet was not just a rescue mission. It was a message. Down on New Terra's surface, Dr. Amy Foster wiped sweat from her forehead as she worked in the mineral extraction facility. Her hands were rough and scarred from years of hard labor. The Hegemony had sorted all the humans into work groups when they first arrived. They looked at humans and saw primitive creatures that were only good for digging and carrying and building. They had no idea that Amy had once been one of Earth's best quantum physicists. The aliens thought they knew everything about humans. They had studied the survivors, cataloged their abilities, and decided they were a simple species. The Vorthak used humans for construction work because humans could lift heavy things. The Zentari used them in factories because human fingers were good at detailed assembly. The Phalan used them for farming because humans understood how to grow things. The Kyros used them for mining because humans could work in tight spaces. What the aliens did not know was that Amy and others like her had been planning and preparing for this day. Engineer Tony Clark worked in the spaceport, fixing alien machines and learning how they worked. Teacher Maria Santos taught alien children in the education centers, but she also taught human children in secret. Dr. Kevin Brown treated both alien and human patients in the medical facilities, but he also treated the wounded resistance fighters who the aliens never knew existed. The resistance had been careful for 30 years. They passed messages through systems the aliens could not detect. They stored weapons in places the aliens would never search. They memorized maps of every important building and memorized the schedules of every guard patrol. Most importantly, they never gave up hope that Earth would return for them. Amy felt her hidden communicator vibrate against her wrist. She waited until the Vorthak overseer was looking the other way, then checked the small device. The message was short and used a code that had been passed down through 3 decades of secret meetings. When she decoded it, her heart started beating faster than it had in years. The message said simply, "The cavalry is coming home." She looked around the facility at the other human workers. Some of them were old enough to remember Earth. Others had been born on New Terra and had never seen their true home world. All of them deserved better than this life of endless labor under alien masters. All of them deserved to be free. The Hegemony had made a terrible mistake 30 years ago. They thought that conquering human space would be easy. They thought that humans would either die fighting or accept their new role as slaves. They never considered that humans might pretend to be broken while secretly growing stronger. They never imagined that Earth might use the time to develop new weapons and new ships. They never dreamed that the humans they enslaved might be gathering intelligence and preparing for the day when their people would return. That day had finally arrived. The Second Earth Fleet was moving into position at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Kate Sullivan was reviewing the attack plans one final time. Commander Eric Stone was checking his fighter squadron. Captain Nicole Adams was testing the new weapon systems that would shock the aliens into submission. On New Terra, Amy Foster sent her own coded message to resistance cells across the planet. The signal was simple, but its meaning was clear to every human who received it. After 30 years of waiting, after 30 years of planning, after 30 years of hope, the time for action had come. The aliens had grown comfortable in their victory. Their patrols had become routine. Their defenses had become predictable. They saw humans as defeated creatures who would never fight back. They were about to learn that they had been watching the wrong species all along. The Hegemony Coalition had ruled this part of the galaxy for over a century. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved hundreds of species. They thought they understood how conquest worked. They thought they knew how to break the spirit of their enemies. They had never met humans before. They were about to discover that humans do not break easily. They were about to learn that humans remember everything. Most importantly, they were about to find out that humans never, ever give up. The Second Earth Fleet was ready. The Resistance was ready. The time for hiding was over. The time for freedom had begun. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the tactical display on her command screen as her ships emerged from hyperspace. The moment she had trained for during 5 years was finally here. Around her, the bridge crew of the UES Valiant worked with calm efficiency, but she could feel the tension in the air. Everyone knew what this moment meant for humanity. The Hegemony's orbital defense platforms lit up immediately. Warning lights flashed across alien control boards as their sensors detected the approaching human fleet, but their response was slow and confused. The aliens had grown lazy after 30 years of easy victory. They had no idea that Earth possessed the technology to build ships this advanced. On the orbital station called Dominion's Crown, Vorthak Commander Sektar stared at his display screen with growing alarm. The readings made no sense. The ships approaching New Terra had human design signatures, but they were far more sophisticated than anything in the Hegemony's databases. The primitive mammals from Earth were supposed to be extinct, or at best hiding in their home solar system like wounded animals. Sektar's clawed hands moved over his control panel as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The human ships were larger than expected. Their energy readings were off the charts. Their formation patterns showed a level of tactical coordination that the Hegemony had never seen from this species. Something was very wrong with everything the aliens thought they knew about humans. The first shots came from the Hegemony forces, exactly as Admiral Sullivan had expected. She had hoped for a peaceful solution, but Lieutenant Colonel Ben Hayes had prepared for this exact scenario. The alien plasma bursts streaked across space toward the lead human destroyer, the UES Defiance, commanded by Captain Sam Rodriguez. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The plasma fire struck the human ship's hull and simply disappeared. The new quantum shield technology absorbed the alien weapons like they were nothing more than bright lights. Not even a scratch appeared on the Defiance's armor plating. Captain Rodriguez opened a communication channel to Admiral Sullivan. "No damage reported, Admiral. Shields are holding at full strength. The aliens might as well be throwing rocks at us." Sullivan nodded and gave the order that would change the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. "Return fire. Targeted strikes only. Disable their weapons and engines. Do not destroy unless absolutely necessary." The human particle beam weapons fired for the first time in actual combat. The beams moved faster than the aliens could track and struck with surgical precision. Within minutes, 3 orbital defense platforms were drifting in space, their weapon systems completely destroyed and their engines dead. The Hegemony defenders had never seen anything like it. But the real shock came when the humans began broadcasting on all communication frequencies. Commander Sektar expected to hear demands for surrender or threats of total destruction. Instead, he heard something that made his blood run cold. The human admiral was not talking to the Hegemony forces at all. She was talking to the slaves on the planet below. "Citizens of New Terra," came Admiral Sullivan's voice, translated into the local dialect that had evolved during 30 years of occupation. "This is the Second Earth Fleet. We have come to bring you home. The years of waiting are over. The time of freedom has begun." The effect was immediate and devastating to Hegemony operations. Across the planet's surface, human workers stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. In factories and mining facilities, in agricultural centers and construction sites, In every place where humans labored under alien oversight, the impossible was happening. Earth had returned. Dr. Amy Foster heard the message in the mineral extraction facility where she had worked for 15 years. Around her, other humans began to smile for the first time in decades. The Vorthak overseers noticed the change immediately and started shouting orders. But their voices were lost in the growing excitement of the human workers. Amy activated protocols that had been prepared for this exact moment. Hidden throughout the facility were small devices that resistance members had placed over many years. With a few quick commands, she began the systematic shutdown of critical systems. Power grids started failing in carefully planned patterns. Communication networks went dark in coordinated waves. Engineer Tony Clark was doing the same thing at the spaceport. He moved through the facility with confidence born from 30 years of planning. Every security code, every system vulnerability, every guard rotation had been memorized by the resistance. The aliens had trusted their human workers to maintain their technology. That trust was about to cost them everything. In orbit, the space battle continued with increasing desperation from the hegemony forces. Captain Nicole Adams commanded the heavy cruiser UES Retribution, using gravitational manipulation technology that bent space itself around enemy fire. The Kairos crystal ships tried to phase between dimensions to escape, but found themselves trapped in localized gravity, wells that humanity had learned to create. Commander Eric Stone led his fighter squadron in attacks that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about space combat. Instead of traditional dogfights, the human pilots used quantum tunneling drives to appear inside enemy formations. They delivered devastating close-range attacks and vanished again before the aliens could respond. The Zentari Hive commander Zek Thara received reports from across the battle zone. Every piece of information contradicted what the hegemony believed about human capabilities. The mammals were not just surviving the alien attacks, they were winning with ease. Their technology was superior to anything the Coalition possessed. But the most shocking revelation came when Lieutenant Commander Rachel Moore transmitted detailed intelligence about hegemony fleet movements, political structures, and military capabilities. The data was incredibly accurate and covered 30 years of alien operations. Earth had not just been rebuilding during their supposed exile. They had been watching, learning, and preparing for this exact moment. The Phelan Collective's gaseous consciousness began to fracture under the stress of this impossible situation. How had they so completely underestimated this species? How had humans not only survived but developed technology that made them superior to their former conquerors? How had the Coalition been so blind to the threat growing in Earth's solar system? On New Terra's surface, Amy Foster stood in the central plaza of New Hope City and watched hegemony dropships fleeing toward space. Around her, 30 years of suppressed humanity burst forth as people sang forbidden songs, raised hidden flags, and spoke names that had been banned by their alien masters. The Second Earth Fleet had arrived, and the alien ranks had indeed erupted into chaos. The effects spread across New Terra like wildfire, as human workers abandoned their posts throughout the planet. Dr. Amy Foster moved quickly through the mineral extraction facility, activating systems that had been hidden for decades. Around her, other resistance members emerged from their roles as simple laborers and revealed themselves as the organized force they had always been. The Zentari Hive commander, Zek Thara, received panicked reports from facility supervisors across the planet. The humans were not just leaving their workstations randomly. They were shutting down critical infrastructure in patterns that showed intimate knowledge of hegemony systems. Power grids failed in sequences that caused maximum disruption. Communication networks went dark in ways that prevented alien forces from coordinating their response. Engineer Tony Clark led his team into the central processing facility that controlled the planet's main spaceport. They moved with the confidence of people who had spent 30 years memorizing every corridor and studying every security system. The Vorthak guards tried to stop them, but the humans knew exactly where the aliens would be and exactly how to avoid them. Clark reached the main control room and began entering commands that would cripple the spaceport's ability to launch ships or coordinate ground forces. The alien technology responded to his touch as if he had designed it himself. In many ways, he had. Human slaves had been maintaining these systems for 3 decades, learning their weaknesses and preparing for this moment. The spaceport's defensive systems shut down one by one. Landing platforms locked into position, trapping alien ships on the ground. Communication arrays went offline, cutting the spaceport off from orbital command. Most importantly, the facility's ability to track and target human ships disappeared completely. In orbit above the planet, the space battle was turning into a complete disaster for the hegemony forces. Captain Nicole Adams guided the UES Retribution through enemy formations using gravitational technology that the aliens had never seen before. The heavy cruiser could literally bend space around itself, making enemy weapons miss their target while allowing human guns to fire from impossible angles. The Kiros crystal ships had always been the most feared vessels in the hegemony fleet because of their ability to phase between dimensions. They could appear and disappear at will, striking without warning and vanishing before anyone could fight back. But the human ships were trapping them in gravity wells that prevented dimensional shifting. For the first time in their history, the Kiros found themselves unable to escape a battle they were losing. Commander Eric Stone's fighter squadron demonstrated why humans had become the dominant species on Earth through millions of years of evolution. Instead of following predictable attack patterns like other species, they improvised and adapted in real time. Human pilots used quantum tunneling drives to appear inside enemy formations, delivered devastating attacks, and vanished before the aliens could respond. The fighters moved like living creatures rather than machines, each pilot making split-second decisions that confused and frustrated the alien defenders. Stone himself appeared directly behind a Vorthak command ship, fired a full spread of missiles at point-blank range, and tunneled away as the enemy vessel exploded. But the most devastating revelation came when Lieutenant Commander Rachel Moore transmitted 30 years of intelligence data to every ship in the human fleet. The information showed that Earth had never stopped watching the Hegemony Coalition. Human agents had been gathering data on alien fleet movements, political negotiations, and military capabilities throughout the entire occupation period. The aliens discovered that their supposedly secret bases were marked on human star charts. Their classified weapon systems had been analyzed by Earth scientists. Their internal political disputes had been monitored and cataloged. Earth knew everything about the hegemony, while the aliens knew nothing about what humanity had become. Admiral Kate Sullivan reviewed the intelligence data as her ships continued their systematic destruction of hegemony orbital defenses. What she saw confirmed everything that Earth's planners had hoped for. The alien coalition was not as strong as they pretended to be. Political tensions between the four species had been growing for years. Military coordination was poor because each species trusted only their own forces. The Phalon collective's gaseous consciousness began arguing with itself as different portions of their shared mind disagreed about how to respond to the human attack. Some wanted to negotiate for peace. Others demanded a fighting retreat to preserve their forces. Still others suggested abandoning the coalition entirely and seeking separate terms with Earth. The internal conflict spread through the Phalon communication networks like a virus, affecting their ability to coordinate with other hegemony forces. Ships received contradictory orders or no orders at all. The gaseous beings who had once prided themselves on perfect unity were fracturing under pressure they had never experienced before. On the planet's surface, resistance cells activated across every major population center. Teacher Maria Santos led a group of humans in taking control of the education facility, where she had worked for 20 years. The building served as a communication hub for the southern continent, and its capture cut alien commanders off from half their ground forces. Dr. Kevin Brown and his team secured the main medical facility in New Hope City. The aliens had always assumed that the human medical staff were loyal because they treated both species equally. They never realized that human doctors had been using their access to gather intelligence on alien biology and prepare treatments for wounded resistance fighters. The Vorthak tried to organize a counterattack using their ground forces, but discovered that their human workers had sabotaged vehicles, disabled weapons, and stolen communication equipment. Worse, the humans seemed to know exactly where every alien patrol would be and how to avoid or ambush them. General Morthek received reports that made no sense to his reptilian mind. How could a species that had been conquered and enslaved for 30 years suddenly demonstrate such detailed knowledge of hegemony operations? How could humans who worked as simple laborers reveal themselves as sophisticated military operators? The answer was becoming clear to those alien commanders smart enough to understand it. The humans had never really been conquered at all. They had been playing a longer game, accepting temporary defeat in order to achieve ultimate victory. They had used their enslavement as an opportunity to learn everything about their enemies while their home world prepared the tools needed for liberation. Amy Foster stood in the central plaza of New Hope City as the last hegemony transport. Ships lifted off from the spaceport. Around her, humans who had hidden their true nature for 3 decades finally allowed themselves to remember who they really were. The age of alien domination was ending, and the age of human freedom was about to begin. Admiral Kate Sullivan authorized the transmission of a data package that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the Hegemony Coalition. The information contained 30 years of human intelligence gathering, detailed records of alien war crimes, and most shocking of all, complete documentation of how the Hegemony had been stealing technology from the species they conquered. Colonel Danny Wright coordinated the ground assault as human Marines landed at key installations across New Terra. These were not the desperate rescue forces that the aliens expected to see. These soldiers moved like they had been born on this world, because many of them had been. They knew every street, every building, every hiding place on the planet they were liberating. Sergeant Maria Lopez led her squad through the streets of New Hope City toward the government complex that had served as hegemony headquarters for 3 decades. She had been evacuated from this city as a 5-year-old child when the aliens first arrived. Now she was 28 years old and leading former neighbors in an assault against their oppressors. The Vorthak defenders found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Human forces appeared where they were not expected and vanished when alien reinforcements arrived. The reptilian warriors had conquered dozens of worlds using their superior technology and ruthless tactics, but they had never faced an enemy that understood them so completely. General Morthek tried to coordinate the defense from his command bunker beneath the government complex, but his communication systems were failing one by one. The humans were not just attacking military targets randomly. They were systematically destroying the hegemony's ability to organize and respond. Every cut cable and disabled transmitter had been planned years in advance. The Zentari wanted to negotiate a peaceful withdrawal, but their requests for communication were ignored by human forces. The insectoid beings had always prided themselves on logical thinking and careful planning, but the situation on New Terra made no logical sense to them. How could a defeated species return stronger than their conquerors? Dr. Amy Foster was escorted to the planet's main communication center by a squad of human Marines. The facility had been used by the hegemony to monitor and control all planetary communications for 30 years. Now it would serve a very different purpose. Amy activated the quantum transmitters and made direct contact with Admiral Sullivan's flagship. Her first transmission to the fleet contained coordinates for hidden research, facilities where human scientists had been forced to work on weapons development for their alien masters. The implications were staggering to everyone who heard them. The hegemony's most advanced weapons had been designed, at least in part, by enslaved human minds who had been planning their creator's downfall from the very beginning. Captain Ryan Murphy led the assault on the orbital shipyards where the hegemony maintained and constructed their fleet. What his boarding teams found in the construction bays shocked even the experienced Space Marines. Hidden in the deepest sections were the hulks of human ships from the original colonial fleet, being reverse-engineered and incorporated into alien designs. The discovery meant that the hegemony had not just conquered human space 30 years ago. They had been stealing human innovation and claiming it as their own for 3 decades. Every improvement to their ships, every advancement in their technology, every tactical innovation they had developed was based on human designs that they had captured and copied. Murphy transmitted images of the shipyards back to Earth, where government officials finally understood the full scope of what had been done to humanity. The aliens had not just enslaved human bodies, they had enslaved human creativity and intelligence. They had built their empire on stolen human ideas while keeping the creators in chains. But the most shocking discovery came when Commander Scott Turner accessed the hegemony's central database using codes that Resistance members had stolen over many years. The files he found revealed the truth about the Great Retreat that had ended human expansion 30 years earlier. Earth's government had not been defeated in a desperate last stand as everyone believed. The retreat had been a planned strategic withdrawal. Earth's leaders had sacrificed the outer colonies to buy time, but they had left behind more than just refugees and resistance fighters. They had left behind observers, researchers, spies, and most importantly, a detailed plan for eventual return. The Second Earth Fleet was not a rescue mission that had been thrown together in desperation. It was the final phase of a 30-year operation that had turned humanity's greatest apparent defeat into the foundation for their ultimate victory. Every human who had remained on the conquered worlds had been part of the plan. Every piece of intelligence gathered, every system sabotaged, every alien weakness discovered, had been reported back to Earth through channels the hegemony never knew existed. Turner found communication, logs showing regular contact between Earth and the resistance cells throughout the occupation period. Supply drops had been made to remote locations using ships the aliens never detected. Weapons and equipment had been stockpiled in hidden caches across dozens of worlds. Most importantly, detailed plans for this exact operation had been updated and refined continuously for 3 decades. The Kairos crystal beings attempted to phase out of normal space to escape the battle, but found themselves trapped by gravity field generators that the humans had somehow developed. The crystalline entities existed partially in other dimensions, making them nearly impossible to destroy with conventional weapons. But human scientists had learned to anchor them in normal space, where they could be fought and defeated. As news of the human victories spread through hegemony communication networks, panic began to set in among alien populations across their territory. The species that they had dismissed as primitive and defeated was demonstrating technology and tactical abilities that made the coalition look backward and weak by comparison. The Phalon collective's shared consciousness fractured completely as different portions of their gaseous minds chose different responses to the crisis. Some sections wanted to surrender immediately, others demanded a fight to the death, and still others simply began fleeing toward distant parts of the galaxy where humans might never find them. Admiral Sullivan received reports from across the battle zone showing the complete collapse of organized hegemony resistance. But more importantly, she received intelligence showing that the victory at New Terra was having effects far beyond this single world. On 17 different planets, enslaved populations were rising in rebellion against their alien masters. The hegemony coalition that had dominated this sector of the galaxy for over a century was collapsing from within, and everyone knew that humanity was the cause. The hegemony coalition that had ruled this sector of space for over a century was falling apart completely. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the reclaimed government building of New Hope City, watching reports flow in from across alien territory. What had started as a liberation mission for one human colony was becoming something much larger and more significant for the entire galaxy. The news of humanity's return spread through space like a shockwave. On 17 different worlds where the hegemony had enslaved other species, populations were rising in rebellion. The aliens had built their empire on the belief that resistance was hopeless, that their technology and military power could not be challenged. The human victory at New Terra had shattered that belief forever. The Zentari hive mind was experiencing something that had never happened in their species' history. Different sections of their collective consciousness were making completely different decisions about how to respond to the human threat. Some clusters wanted to negotiate for peace with Earth immediately. Others demanded total war against humanity. Still others simply wanted to flee to distant parts of the galaxy where humans might never find them. The result was a species-wide neural cascade that effectively paralyzed their entire civilization. Centauri ships received contradictory orders or no orders at all. Some vessels began attacking human forces while others tried to surrender. The insectoid beings who had once moved with perfect coordination were now scattered and confused, unable to function as the unified force they had always been. Commander Jake Morrison led the investigation teams that were searching through captured hegemony research facilities. What they found in the deepest laboratories made even experienced soldiers feel sick with anger. The aliens had not just enslaved the human colonists for labor. They had been conducting genetic experiments, trying to understand what made humans so adaptable and innovative compared to other species. The research files showed decades of testing on human subjects, with alien scientists trying to isolate the genes responsible for human creativity, problem-solving ability, and refusal to accept defeat. The irony was not lost on anyone who read the reports. In their attempt to steal humanity's greatest strengths, the aliens had only made humans more determined to destroy them completely. Dr. Amy Foster, now serving as the official liaison between the former colonists and the Liberation Fleet, transmitted a message that would be remembered throughout human space for generations to come. Her words were broadcast on every frequency and translated into dozens of languages so that enslaved populations across the galaxy could hear them. "We never forgot who we were," she said, her voice steady and strong. "We just let them think they had broken us. We spent 30 years learning everything about our enemies while they learned nothing about us. Today we remember that humans do not just survive impossible situations. We use them to become stronger than anyone thought possible." The Vorthak military leadership made one final desperate attempt to salvage their empire. They launched a massive surprise attack directly against Earth itself, believing that striking at humanity's homeworld would force the Second Fleet to withdraw from alien territory. They assembled every ship they could find and sent them racing toward the solar system in humanity's ultimate stronghold. What they found when they arrived at Earth was a defense system that made their own technology look like primitive tools from the Stone Age. The attack fleet was detected while still days away from the planet. Automated defense platforms destroyed most of the alien ships before they even knew they were under attack. The few vessels that survived long enough to see Earth's orbital defenses were captured intact by tractor beams they could not escape. The failed attack on Earth was broadcast throughout the galaxy as proof that the hegemony was finished as a military force. Admiral Peterson himself led the interrogation of captured Vorthak officers, learning that the assault had stripped away the last reserves that the alien coalition possessed. They had gambled everything on one desperate strike and lost completely. Colonel Lisa Barnes made a discovery that would reshape galactic politics for decades to come. While searching through captured communication records, she found evidence that the Kiros crystal beings had been secretly negotiating with Earth for months before the liberation of New Terra. The crystalline species had apparently concluded that humanity represented a better path forward than the increasingly unstable hegemony coalition. The Kiros had been providing intelligence about hegemony, fleet movements, and military plans to Earth in exchange for promises of protection from their former allies. Their ability to exist in multiple dimensions had made them perfect spies, and they had been using that ability to help humanity plan the most effective attacks against alien targets. Captain Sam Rodriguez discovered the most important intelligence of all in the deepest archives of the hegemony's central command. Hidden in files marked with the highest security classifications was evidence that the alien coalition had been planning to expand far beyond their current territory. They had identified hundreds of worlds with intelligent life and were preparing to launch conquest operations that would have enslaved entire sectors of the galaxy. The documents showed detailed invasion plans for species that had never even heard of the hegemony coalition. Peaceful civilizations were marked for conquest and enslavement. Entire cultures were scheduled for destruction. The aliens had been preparing for a wave of expansion that would have brought suffering to billions of innocent beings across known space. Humanity's return had not just saved one colony world and its enslaved population. It had prevented a galactic catastrophe that would have destroyed countless civilizations. The Second Earth Fleet had arrived just in time to stop the hegemony from becoming an unstoppable force of conquest and oppression. The final message that Admiral Kate Sullivan sent to Earth was brief but filled with meaning that would inspire human explorers for generations. "Mission accomplished," she transmitted. "New Terra is free. The hegemony coalition is finished. The galaxy will never be the same again." As the Second Earth Fleet began establishing humanity's new position as a major galactic power, the former colonists of New Terra looked up at the stars with hope they had not felt in 30 years. They had endured 3 decades of slavery and oppression, but they had never lost the most important thing that made them human. They had never stopped believing that freedom was possible. The hegemony coalition was scattered to the cosmic winds, its member species fleeing to distant parts of space or begging for mercy from the humans they had once enslaved. In its place, a new alliance was forming based on cooperation rather than conquest, led by the species that had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate humanity's ability to turn apparent defeat into ultimate victory.